I'm Rae Allen Everett. I'm the creator of the Manderfield Devil, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Rae Allen Everett about the Manderfield Devil and more at the 2022 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Rae is a freelance illustrator and small press comic book creator based in Provo, Utah. She is a recent graduate of Brigham Young University, where she received her BFA in illustration. With over 7 years of professional experience working as a freelance illustrator, graphic designer, Rae is an active participant of multiple creative projects in publishing, animation, and video games. Rae is a creator of 13 Light Years Away. Her work also includes illustrations for Jake Parker's Skyheart, Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer Age of Doom No. 10, and a short story called Upgrade in a comics anthology called Another New World. Her most recent comic book for showcase at TCAF is The Manderfield Devil. The Manderfield Devil is described as follows. 3 chilling murders in a town ripe with superstition make for a tough case to crack. Will our hard-nosed Detective Hogan nab the crook, or has a devil really come to Manderfield? Noir murder mystery meets cautionary fantasy in this one-shot graphic novella inspired by Hellboy and The Twilight Zone. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Rae Allen Everett about the Manderfield Devil and more at the 2022 Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So, Rae Allen Everett, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started, though, I want to ask you, what was the first comic book that you read?
I'm pretty sure it was Jeff Smith's Bone. Yeah, it was like the only comic that was available in my 7th grade English class, and I didn't like reading, so I picked up a comic instead.
Oh, that's a good one to start with, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But I wanted to ask you, who or what inspires you to create today?
Boy, lots of things. As for who, I'm really inspired by some old masters like Hayao Miyazaki and Winsor McCay. I also really love Mobius and Alphonse Mucha. My family inspires me to create, mostly my husband, who is also an artist, and my mom, who is a writer, and my younger siblings, who I hope to inspire with my work. And then I have a lot of creative friends and some awesome mentors like Jake Parker and Jeff Lemire, and my high school art teacher, like Mary Reeder. As far as what inspires me is, comics, of course. I've always been more into the indie stuff over superheroes, though. Some of my favorites are The Spire by Simon Spurrier and Jeff Stokely, and The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys by Gerard Way and Becky Cloonan. I'm also heavily inspired by history and archaeology and ancient indigenous cultures. The ancestral Puebloans of the Four Corners area down here in the where Utah and New Mexico and Colorado all intersect. That culture is a really highly influential culture for me. I also love learning about the ancient Maya, things like that. And then I'm a big nerd about pulpy sci-fi and radio shows. I listen to a lot of X-1 and love shows like The Twilight Zone and Star Trek. Yeah, I mostly just want to tell good stories and help make the world a better place.
There you go. Lots of good stuff. Absolutely. Got lots of good inspiration there. So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you've been to any other conventions in the past and if you have any favorite moments that you can share.
Yeah, I've been to quite a few. I have an animation and illustration background, and so I've attended a lot of animation-themed cons like CTN in Los Angeles. And there I met Ian McCaig, who's done a lot of work for Star Wars and mostly the prequels. But he was just a really nice creative guy. And after he gave a panel, he like invited all the people that were listening to come out with him, and he did an art demo and was just really friendly and talkative, and it was a really great experience. I also had the opportunity to meet Mike Mignola at the first year of Lightbox. He was also very like personable and just a cool guy to meet. And I think like honestly a lot of my favorite moments are just all the random moments of like going around and meeting other creators and doing like art trades with them, or just being in the general atmosphere of a creative convention. It's just really inspiring.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, there's a good vibe when you're around other creators, I find. It's very, very cool. Well, there you go. Well, we're talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. I want to get more in-depth about what you'll be showcasing there. What books will you have at your table?
So primarily I'll be selling my first published graphic novella. It's called The Manderfield Devil, which I self-published last year, successfully kickstarted it in November, and finally have books here. So this convention is the first place that I'll be selling those books. It's a noir murder mystery meets horror fantasy inspired by Hellboy and the Twilight Zone.
That's pretty cool. I suspect that it's along those sort of lines of supernatural and maybe some humor sort of in the background, perhaps?
I mean, it's a little bit less humorous. I'm not super good at funny, but it is like it's a little wacky because it's definitely like horror fantasy. So some interesting supernatural elements come into play.
Cool. I want to switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools used to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through your workflow.
Sure, yeah. I mostly use digital tools right now. I use Photoshop on a Huon Cintiq. I also draw on the iPad Pro in Procreate, but when I'm drawing in my sketchbook, I use like microns and brush pens and mechanical pencils and watercolor. And I want to try to implement more traditional media in my future work.
So do you start with the pencils in your notebook and then scan it in, or do you just do it as a reference?
Sometimes I do find that drawing by hand physically is easier for the thumbnailing stage of coming up with comics. It's just more fluid, and also designing some characters. It's just easier to not care as much about making it perfect because I can't hit undo multiple times. I just have to kind of run with it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, in the past I have like taken some drawings straight from my sketchbook and just implemented them into some of my comics, but usually I just work on the Cintiq and sketch it in Photoshop.
All right. Yeah, that does a trick for sure. Now, I was looking at your bio. It says, and you mentioned before that you worked in animation and video games. So all things considered, do you have a preference when it comes to creating art, whether it's animation/video games or comic books?
That's a good question. I do love comic books first and foremost, and I want to actually like pursue that as my main focus because I just love being able to take full control of the story. I'm very vision focused, and I like to execute a very specific vision, and it's just easier to do that and not be a pig-headed person when you're doing it by yourself and not working with a team. But I also do enjoy that team aspect of working with other people because you can get so many more ideas and you can feed off of each other and make something completely new and interesting. So I think they're both just like it's a different approach because animation and games both are very team effort focused. Comics can sometimes be team effort, but mostly it's a much smaller team. So yeah, I think it just depends on the project.
Understood. Yeah. So you've talked about books that you have at TCAF. Do you have any other up-and-coming projects that you can talk about?
Yeah, my next big project is a YA adventure series called 13 Light Years Away, which I plan to publish as 2 or 3 graphic novels. I'm going to try pitching it around to publishers or I'll self-publish it. I'm not sure what'll happen there, but it's like the mystical sci-fi of Star Wars and Dune meets the whimsy of Studio Ghibli. And it's a project that I've like been working on for forever. It's my baby project, so I'm really anxious to get it out there.
I bet. Yeah, it sounds very intriguing. That's for sure. Good stuff. Well, we mentioned you were going to be at TCAF in June. Wondering if you'll be attending any other festivals or conventions later this year.
Yes, I will be at a lot. I'll be going to Emerald City in August, and then I'll be going to FanX Salt Lake in September, and then I'll be attending Lightbox in October, and then in November I'm going to Thought Bubble.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
Cool.
I'll be tabling at 3 of those. So it's going to be a
Nice.
lot.
Lots of travel going on there, that's for sure. Yeah. So with all that you have going on, do you have a website that you recommend people go to find out more about your current and your future projects?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, you can learn more from. I'm Rae Allen Art on Instagram and Twitter. That's RaeAllenArt. You can also find my website at raeallenart.com.
Cool. Well, Rae, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you want to get across in this interview?
I do have a couple more projects I could talk about. I'm also, with my Manderfield Devil comic, I plan to have a series called The Uncanny Chronicle, which will be an anthology of graphic novellas, like similar length to the Manderfield Devil, featuring standalone stories in the same tone, which will basically combine horror fantasy with classic Americana. So, for example, Lovecraftian horror in a Great Gatsby setting, or Orson Welles' The Hitchhiker mixed with classic Route 66, like tourist traps. So I plan to have about 5 books in that series. And then I am also working on, because we mentioned video games, I'm working on an indie pixel platformer with my husband and another video game developer, a friend of ours named Jordan. And it's a really fun Nausicaa world that is, the mechanic is that you can split from your spirit. You can use that to basically like sort of slingshot yourself around. But yeah, it's really cool. It's fun.
Thanks to Rae for the chat. You can discover more about Rae on Twitter and Instagram at RaeAllenArt and online at RaeAllenArt.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel and hit the notification button. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyrighted True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.